The 80s and 90s were an awesome time for licensed Disney games. Developers like Sega, Capcom, and Virgin Games did justice to these classic properties. Be it based on Mickey Mouse, Saturday morning cartoons, classic Disney movies, and even newly released, there was a never-ending stream of games to choose from. So, on today's episode of 5 Games, I present 5 retro Disney games. First up is Mickey Mousecapade. Despite the box showing off the promising Capcom logo, this was actually developed by Hudson Soft and published in North America by Capcom back in 1988. In Japan, this was known as simply Mickey Mouse, as we can see from the title screen. The game starts off well enough. You pilot Mickey through a funhouse with various oddities all out to get Mickey and Minnie. While you control Mickey, Minnie mirrors your movements, although delayed, somewhat hindering your ability to climb ladders. After finding a power-up and a couple of keys, you defeat a boss and the level is done. It's not the most engaging experience ever, but it shows promise. Unfortunately, that promise is flushed down the toilet for the rest of the game. The remaining levels forego the treasure hunting altogether, and Mickey Mousecapade turns into a side-scrolling platformer, and unfortunately, it isn't very good. Everything is basically trial and error, and if you fail to jump at the exact right moment, you're going to take damage. Worse yet, if Minnie falls into the water, you die. It's hard enough just dodging enemies and waves, but having to account for Minnie's delayed action just sucks whatever fun was left in the game. It's a short game with just a handful of levels, but honestly, don't bother. Mickey Mousecapade is kind of terrible. Next up is Tailspin for the Sega Genesis. This one was developed by Sega themselves and released in 1992, and curiously enough, never made it to Japan. Anyway, after a lengthy intro sequence explaining a new government contract would be won based on some arbitrary contest, we are off. The goal of each level is straightforward. Simply collect 10 cargo crates and then reach the exit before time runs out. There are more than 10 crates in each level, so it isn't the most tedious thing in the world, and the levels are laid out in a way where it's easy enough to backtrack. Even the controls are decent enough, and the jumping is responsive and predictable, but the combat is awful. Your weapon is a paddle ball, I think, and while it can fire quite rapidly, something about the collision detection in this game is just bad. It's impossible to hit anything. Your ball will go right through enemies, and the strange arc makes hitting smaller enemies like crabs impossible, and erratic enemies like birds an absolute nightmare. Even worse, it's not always clear when you can hit an enemy. They may even flash like they are dying, but nope, nothing is actually happening. The flying levels are also a joke, with your plane featuring some truly wonky momentum trying to simulate reality in a cartoon game. The graphics and sound don't help matters much either, and it's clear Sega had their B team on this one. Tailspin for the Genesis just has an overall cash grab feel to it, and it is pretty obvious why Sega of Japan never bothered. Okay, with those out of the way, let's move on to 1994's The Lion King. Right away, you'll notice the audio is quite spectacular. Throughout the entire game are renditions of tracks taken right from the movie, and some of them are just dead on. As I venture through the Genesis library, it never ceases to amaze me the audio fidelity some developers were able to get out of the hardware. Matching the stunning audio are some gorgeous graphics. Not only are the sprites detailed, the frame rate super smooth, and the animations top-notch, the game is just dripping with color. Each and every level does a wonderful job capturing the mood of the motion picture, and it's an absolute feast for the eyes. Now, The Lion King was highly praised upon release and still loved to this day, but much like Earthworm Jim, I don't think the game has aged very well. I've been trying to enjoy this game for 2 decades now, and the experience is always miserable for me. There is a lack of consistency in enemy behavior, with bugs exploding for no reason, lizards or reptiles or whatever being invincible when their tongue is hanging out, and the hyenas only being vulnerable after their out-of-breath animation finally begins. There is an insane amount of trial and error here, and it drives me nuts. Level design follows suit, with a lot of strange gimmicks existing for no reason other than to aggravate the player. Simba later grows into Big Simba, but good luck making it that far. The Lion King is not challenging, but rather a hard game, and for all the wrong reasons. I don't feel a sense of accomplishment after clearing a level, instead, just relief. While it may have been good in its day, I just don't feel this one holds up. Now and again, people will ask me why I bother playing bad games or fight through games when I am not having any fun, and the reason for me is simple. Playing through some of history's lesser games helps me appreciate the great ones. The sweet isn't as sweet without the sour, if you know what I mean. This brings us to 1993's Aladdin, also for the Sega Genesis. Now this is a fantastic Disney game. It starts with the excellent controls. Aladdin moves like a gazelle, and it's incredibly satisfying to maneuver through the levels and land tricky jumps. The sword is fun to swing, the apples act as a great secondary item to take out long-distance foes, and everything feels tight and accurate. The graphics and sound aren't the best the Genesis has to offer, but do hold up extremely well. The art direction as a whole is good, and each level has a distinct color palette, helping each area feel completely unique. The music is also above average, and more impressively, remixes most of the classic songs found in the movie. This is exactly what you want in a licensed Disney game, and Aladdin absolutely delivers. From the opening sequences in Agrabah to the final fight with Jafar, Disney's Aladdin is just a really wonderful game with a high level of polish, and still feels as refreshing today as it did the day it was released. If you're looking for classic 16-bit Disney, Aladdin is where it's at. Finally, moving on to the next generation of consoles is Tarzan for the PlayStation. What I love about this game is how it feels like the Disney games before it, with traditional side-scrolling levels, but updated with well-done polygon graphics. 2.5D, if you will. Anyway, this plays as a mix between the Donkey Kong Country series with hidden branching pathways leading to secret areas, with hidden goodies, and a Virgin Interactive game with smooth controls and an overall laid-back feel. There is even a bit of Crash Bandicoot thrown in, challenging you to find every single item in each stage. Tarzan actually has a surprising level of polish, with rich graphics, excellent texture work, detailed 3D models, and great animation. Even the combat is good, with a few different ways to throw various fruit. The knife kind of sucks, but you do get a spear during the pseudo-bosses, and it works really well. Being a CD-based game, the soundtrack is terrific, with music ripped straight from the film, along with plenty of original compositions doing a great job capturing the overall jungle feel. Something about this game really grabs me. I love how the developers occasionally take advantage of the 3 dimensions, looping around trees and whatnot, without breaking the linear gameplay. I also love how the camera zooms in and out and occasionally pans, making sure specific targets are in view. Little touches like this really put Tarzan over the top. Considering this received a greatest hits re-release, the game is cheap and easy to find, and you should definitely give it a try. So there you have it, 5 retro Disney games spanning 3 hardware generations. Now, this is not a definitive list and obviously not a best of, and there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of Disney games released over the past 3 decades, so be sure to leave a comment and let me know some of your favorites.